Hello and welcome to another edition of the Rancher's Guide to Profit. We're joined today with Tom Woodward of Brosico Ranches, the 2007 BIF Commercial Producer of the Year winner. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about Brosico Ranches and your outfit?
Well, Clint, thank you. It's good to be here. We operate up in Northeast Texas, and we're basically a cow-calf operation there, commercial cow-calf. We do have some seed stock cattle, some Red Angus seed stock.
In an earlier podcast, we had talked about EPDs and how a producer can utilize them in making the selection decisions when they're purchasing bulls. Let's talk about the thought process that you go through as you prepare to buy your bulls for your program.
Well, Clint, I think first off, there's some very basic decisions that a producer needs to make, and that is, how am I going to market these calves? What am I going to do with the calves that these bulls are going to produce? And then you have several other questions there. Am I going to retain replacements out of these bulls for my herd, or am I going to sell all of these calves? And am I going to sell the calves at the gate of the ranch when the calves are weaned, or am I going to own those calves through another phase and possibly even retained ownership through to the packing house? So I think first you need to answer some of those questions to kind of decide, okay, here's the kind of bulls I need to go after, because the EPD set that I might be looking for in bulls to use to keep replacement heifers may be a little different than those if I'm going to sell all of these calves at weaning time.
So in essence, Tom, what you're saying is a producer needs to evaluate where his program's at, the direction he wants to go, where he wants to end that market point up before he starts using any kind of tool to select the bulls, so that he knows the type of bulls that he's after.
Yes, I think so, Clint, because I think too many people say, well, I need some bulls, and they jump in their pickup and they run to a bull sale and pull out a catalog and run down through the pens and try to pick a bull. And I don't think that's going to yield the best results for him in the long run. But if he already knows that, yes, I'm going to retain some replacement heifers, and these are the kind of genetics I have right now, how do I best complement that then so that I can have heifers to keep out of these bulls? And that's going to drive the decisions he makes then as he's looking through the catalog and looking at the performance information on these bulls.
Well, Tom, as you stated, there's a lot of outlets for guys to market their calf crop, and they've got to have that in mind as they're thinking about bull selection. You know, where's the final destination they want to get to? And you'd mentioned retaining replacement heifers, which is a much different decision and criteria on bulls than if you're just selling cattle as terminal crosses. And then on that aspect, you'd mentioned whether or not they were retaining any ownership, selling the calves right off the cow to sale barn, if they're running them as yearlings. You know, when we talk about the end product, which ultimately winds up being the nutritious beef that our consumers are eating, what are some of the criteria you use when selecting genetics to obtain the goals that you've set for your program?
Well, Clint, let's specify first that our program has been producing an end product for a number of years. And that's going to be different than maybe some other producer. But I'm looking for balance in those sires that I use, because I'm going to be retaining replacements. I want growth because we've got cattle to go through the feed yard, but I also want traits that provide value in the end product. And so I'm going to be paying some attention to marbling, to muscle, and of course tenderness. Now, the measures for tenderness, we have some, but they're not being widely used in the industry right now. But so that brings you back to focusing on marbling, and the EPDs we have, plus the IMF information that we gain from ultrasounding our bull calves. I do try to stack some marbling ability in these cattle, because as I take those calves and put them on the rail, there is some value that's generated when you have cattle that will marble. Certainly that value is greater when our Choice Select spread is got some spread in it. But you can't design your genetics program around what the market is doing this month. I mean, you've got to look long term.
Tom, you brought up a good point there about stacking genetics. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy and what you mean by that?
Clint, yes. I have also learned the hard way that you don't get it all done in that first generation. If you've got a set of cows and you go out and buy bulls that have traits you're looking for, you're going to get some improvement. But let's remember that heritability of these traits is 20% or 25%. And so you don't change that herd of cows quickly. So by continually, year after year, continuing to find the right genetics, retain the replacements that you produce from those genetics, you're beginning to stack those traits. And so over a period of years then, you can take a herd that maybe typically would grade 40%, or let's say 50%, which is kind of standard for the industry, that would grade choice. 50% of those calves would grade choice when they're finished. You can move a herd to where maybe you're running 70 or 80% of your calves will grade choice by stacking that ability in those cows over a period of years. So it's not a quick thing. If you're going to retain replacements and build a herd, it takes years, but you can continue to stack that in there, and that's what we've tried to do.
That really speaks to consistency, both in your cow herd and in the end product, the calves that you're selling.
Consistency is so important. You know, even if you're retaining ownership to the rail, because when you put these calves in the feedlot and feed them, and they're harvested and they go to the rail, the more consistent the genetics in those calves, the more you're going to like the outcome at the end. And so consistency is important, and it's only through dedicated selection process in the sires that you buy to use in your herd that you're going to accomplish that. You don't get there any other way.
Another point you made earlier, Tom, was talking about adding muscle to cattle. And we all know that basically the American cow herd is an Angus-based cow herd. And one of the best ways to add muscle to cattle is through crossbreeding. Now, your program utilizes crossbreeding. Can you talk a little bit about the importance to that and what it brings to the table for a commercial producer?
Well, Clint, that's a good topic of heterosis and crossbreeding. And it has so many benefits for the commercial cow producer. Not just adding muscle, which you mentioned, which certainly that is one of the best ways to do that. But heterosis in that cow herd is something I cannot afford to live without. I need some heterosis in that cow to enhance her maternal ability, to get her to breed on an annual basis and produce a calf every year, and all of those things, and her mothering ability. So once I have that in the herd, yes, it gives me a little more opportunity then to step out and select bulls that complement that cow herd.
Tom, we kind of talked about selecting bulls for the end product you have in mind, but can you talk a little bit about the selection pressure you put on where you go to buy your bulls?
Well, Clint, that's one of the real important decisions you make right up front is okay, where do I go that I can find dependable genetics? I know the people do it right in terms of keeping the numbers and measuring the performance of these cattle, but also people that have stayability, people that have been in the business, they have a predictable product, they've been there, they stand behind their product. All of those things are important. So you could almost say that the people are probably just as important as the cattle in this regard.
Well, Tom, I think you brought up a good point there. Regardless of the genetic potential of a bull, without the ability to breed cows and actually pass that on, the bull doesn't have much worth to us. Can you talk a little bit about the things you look for in terms of soundness on bulls when you're buying bulls to breed your cows to?
Well, Clint, that's a good question, and certainly I think a lot of people like to think they're good at selecting cattle for soundness, and some are and some aren't, but that is important. These cattle have got to be able to travel. You know, they talk about what kind of wheels do they have under them. These cattle have got to be structurally correct in the way their skeleton's put together. I like an old bull that's easy moving. He's got a long stride. He covers that front footprint with the back foot. He's got a big foot. I'm not necessarily concerned about how big his bone is. I just want that animal to be able to move freely. And when I watch him walk, I can see that he's going to be able to get out and move and go find cows and get those cows bred.
Tom, I'd like to thank you for joining us today as we talk about the strategies in bull selection. Join us next time as we talk a little more about details on sale day. We're going to discuss the data that we have available to us on sale day and the selection process we make at that time. Thanks again for joining us on the Rancher's Guide for Profit. We look forward to seeing you again next time.